Hey, welcome to another segment of Money in the Bank with Frank. Today we have Mark Hopkins with us. I dragged him in. We do some roundtable discussions. We'll do one on Friday, as a matter of fact. Join us at noon?
Noon on Friday.
Noon on Friday for, more in-depth information. But I saw him. I grabbed him in the hallway. I wanted to talk a little bit about financial advisors and our fear of discussing blockchain and crypto. And listen up. I was excited to bring you on today because I just wanted to talk a little bit about something that's been kind of nagging at me for a while. And, as I try to do on this show, I try not to talk about specifics as to which stocks to buy and sell. I'd like to talk more about general principles in financial planning, right? So that people don't get overwhelmed when you say, what time is it? They just want to know the time. They didn't necessarily need to know how to build the watch, right? So ultimately, my thought process is, what is the information that people like me as financial advisors should be able to discuss with our clients without getting in trouble? Because that's the biggest part of it is, anybody that sells an annuity or anybody that, as a financial advisor knows what an annuity is, whether they like it or hate it, they know all the features, they understand what it is. And then based on their client's information, they can choose whether or not they want to use something like that, like a product like that. And I feel the same way with crypto, but everyone is so afraid of so many things that they don't want to give any information. It's like, yeah, crypto, it exists. It's real. Can't talk about it.
Right.
That's what I say.
It depends on like how you want to talk about it, but there's actually a wide variety of things that you can say before you start even coming close to breaching a kind of an ethical or licensing boundary. I think it just depends on how nerdy you want to get, which is this is really kind of where it all comes down to.
Yep.
It's easy to talk about it as a technology type, right? Bitcoin specifically. As a reference architecture for blockchain, meaning this is the tech. This is the tech that every other crypto is patterned after is Bitcoin. It was the first to achieve what the nerds call Byzantine fault tolerance, meaning it can run without a CEO and still get the job done. And so everyone else is trying to build off of that technology in the world of blockchain, in the world of crypto. So you can talk about all the mechanics that go into that to help people make informed decisions of their own. Or you could start, to kind of back out of the weeds, you can start to talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum and other big names as if you would talk about IBM and Microsoft and Google.
Right. So that's kind of what I was thinking. I'm thinking, when I want to talk about the technology, so we know that the tokens, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm dumbing it down, real dumbing it down. The tokens are what you get for allowing your computer to do the math to track or to do something.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. That's where it breaks down. It's like, I'm a huge believer in the technology. Like, I think that it's going to be great for supply chain. I think it's going to be great for data and keeping track of, for better or worse, not true data, but like actual data.
Provenance and whatnot.
Yeah. And the coins are more up in the air for me. The tokens and tokenization is a little more up in the air. And that's the complicated part that I think people are stuck on all the time and less so on the data. But is there a way as a financial advisor how would I talk about it in those terms? Not too deep into it, but just.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's this is like, how do you eat the elephant? You gotta right.
Yeah, right.
So you gotta figure out like which bites you gotta take first,
Yeah.
because it's a massive concept to wrap your brain around. And I was on someone else's show this morning talking about he and I are both early adopters. We both got into podcasting when it was brand new back in like 2007 or something, and then we both got into Bitcoin. And what we feel is unique about Bitcoin and crypto is that it's one of those early adopter bait technologies that you get into, but instead of like you getting bored with it in 3 years, like we did with podcasting and blogging and whatnot, and sell our companies to somebody else, I mean, it's 15 years and I'm still obsessed with crypto, right? Because there's just so many little nuanced things to learn about and talk about. It has political ramifications, it has technical ramifications, investor ramifications. So talking about it, I think technically...
Voting machines on the blockchain?
I mean, yeah, that absolutely is a possibility. I mean, you can do it.
And you've got all this identity software out there. Like, I almost feel like we're moving into a direction that we kind of want and don't want to be in, but it's almost like you're going to be forced to do it. Like, how do you verify that you are who you say you are now, right? Like, with everything that's online and with everything that's in a bank account, know your investor.
Oh, right. Sorry.
So, like, what do you see as, like, a ID verification, validation, way to prove that it's a person? Like, you've got a corporation, you've got articles of incorporation, you've got operating agreement. That is required to open a bank account. But obviously, as we move forward into digitization and
right. Okay, so let's lay some foundational knowledge, and then we'll build on it. So, what is blockchain for? And this is like the academic $10 word definition. It's a protocol, just like the web or email or something like that. It's an internet protocol for eliminating the requirement for trust between counterparties. Meaning, I don't even have to know you, see you, or trust you for us to interact using a blockchain. That's what it's for. Whereas, we have to use PayPal or a trusted intermediary to do business interactions in other circumstances. Now, moving to the next step of the question is like, how do you apply that to identity verification, and how do you apply that to other types of supply chain? The answer to that is non-fungible tokens, right? So for a blockchain to work, for a blockchain to truly be a trusted or a non-trusted intermediary protocol to work, you have to have tokenization, which is the fungible token, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the other dog coins you've ever heard of. But for you to have non-standard data to on a blockchain, you need to have some sort of token that represents that value, whether it's a car note, a piece of art,
right,
a monkey JPEG, whatever,
social security card,
an identity card,
driver's
exactly,
license, something,
your DNA genome,
and you had to go through certain things to get that document, right? And that's the same kind of idea.
And so this is where it gets actually very interesting, and this is why the monkey JPEG thing was a fad, but it was a prophecy of what's to come on blockchain, right? Is the third thing that you have to have, and this is the thing that's not fully developed for blockchain yet, is data oracles, right? A blockchain only knows a couple of things inherently. It knows, like how many tokens exist on it. It knows like basically what time it is, certain elemental things that a computer would know, right? But it's not going to know, even though it's objectively measurable, it's not going to know the winner of the last Super Bowl. It's not going to know the win-loss record of the Texas Rangers. It can know that, but it has to have some way to be that information that's objectively measurable to be introduced, which is you have to have some node on the network that is a trusted source of that information imported so that it can be measured and used in various ways. And one of those types of nodes that we're talking about, to answer your question, bring it full circle, is identity data. We have to have some way to agree upon what is identity, and then therefore a trusted way to import that identity information into a blockchain for use, which is one of the things that Sam Bankman-Fried's trying to do. It's a thing that Chainlink, a major blockchain, is trying to do. It's been a white whale for a lot of crypto people.
Yeah, I've heard over and over again about the identity issue, and that's what's the scary part, right? Because you have that identity information.
Did I say Sam Bankman-Fried?
Yeah, but
I said Sam Altman.
Yeah, I was like, well, I was like, still let him do that. But theoretically, for me, that's a big part of also. It's like, if they track that, they can track that. They can track where you are, where you spent your money, everything,
right?
With that identity token, and then you Not that you should want to be slippery, but like, who wants
You
to be
should be
targeted?
afforded
Who
exactly.
wants to be targeted?
Yeah.
Who doesn't? No one wants to be targeted. Everyone
I'll
wants
tell
to
you
be
all about that. No, like, you should be afforded the exact amount of privacy as you want. Like that should be a fundamental, like a Western value for privacy. You know, you should have as much privacy. Just because you don't have anything to hide doesn't mean you don't deserve privacy.
So back to the theoretical, the things that you feel that an advisor should know and should be able to talk to their clients about. You mentioned the NFTs, which is the non-fungible token. Benefit there is that it is what it is. That establishes provenance, transaction. Whether you're authorized to do certain types of things, right? And then you've got the fungible tokens, which are the things that we think of, the coins. Yeah. Discussion between CBDCs versus the other non-fungible tokens. Does this go back to, would that be considered private as well? And why feasibly people, as you mention all the time, that like public blockchains versus private blockchains, privates eventually never just don't work.
Yeah.
It has to be public.
A private blockchain is either on a path to becoming a public blockchain, or it's on a path to becoming a disused zombie chain, because there's the performance benefits. Because essentially, and this is another way to wrap your head around what blockchain is, it's a type of database technology. I mean, it's a very specific protocol-based database technology, but at the end of the day, it's indexing data just like a database does. And if you are using a blockchain for indexing data, there better be a good reason for that, meaning you have a multi-tenant environment where people may or may not trust each other, and you need that protocol to act as that intermediary. If that's not a requirement for your use case, what the heck are you doing? You're just slowing down your transaction speeds, right? Because it takes a lot of overhead to maintain a blockchain as a database technology that doesn't exist in an Oracle, SAP, or Postgres or SQL database. Like, these are all technologies that have been around for almost 60 years now, but they've gotten really good. Like, you can do like trillions of transactions a second on Wall Street, with a centralized database. That's the benefit of a centralized database, is transaction speed. But it's not a great multi-tenant environment because someone owns that server, right? And if you live inside somebody else's server, you better trust them. And if you can't, maybe blockchain's the solution for you.
So can we talk about data centers for a second? Now, all the brand new chipsets, the GPUs, people say that the data center business isn't as robust yet, but it will be. Now, it's my understanding that if you own a building, let's say you have a building and then you have enough power going into it and you set it up right, you create yourself a data center. Why wouldn't people have their own? Why would people use that one? Why would that data center buy those high-end chipsets as opposed to people like in the old days, which would just say, I'm going to buy a rack and I just need a rack in your data center? Like, what's new about?
This is I spent the last 15 years talking about it as a journalist with SiliconANGLE and theCUBE, and it's not a sexy topic. I'll be honest. Like, that's the reason why I was able to make a ton of money creating a news network that just talked about data centers and storage and racks and clouds, because like everybody in tech, as a journalist, they love talking about iPhones because you might get a gadget at one of the conferences, and everyone immediately understands like what this is, and okay, I can talk about this. The short answer is economies of scale. Like, you simply cannot deploy a unit of compute for the low price that Jeff Bezos can, and Andy Jassy at AWS can, because of the price of managing that at scale drops the unit price way so far down.
So, do standalone data centers make sense? What's the use case for them if you had one? Is it something that you see a pathway forward for in the future?
You mean like an on-prem internal to a company data center?
Just somebody other than just AWS or Azure or like
Google or whatever.
Google, yeah.
In very rare circumstances, it makes sense. If you have a highly specialized field of where your compute is an edge case, sometimes in the field of GPUs, where you're using any type of GPU compute, although increasingly that's getting commodified as well, it makes sense to roll your own data center. If you're doing ASICs, like what Bitcoin miners do, application-specific integrated circuits, it's absolutely a different type of operation to manage a crypto farm, a Bitcoin farm, than it is a data farm. And so it does make sense to do something on-prem that way. But it doesn't make sense for, I would say, 98% of business to have their own data center. If you're NASDAQ, you definitely don't want to trust the cloud for too much, because like your thing is just so, like high frequency trading. There's game theory involved. You're trying to like fend off. You're just so specialized. You probably want to have your own data center. How many people can say that? Like very few industries.
Yeah, I'm just trying to come up with the path forward for all of the AI chipsets and the model in general. It's like, I kind of feel like, just like you said, the economies of scale are that you would just rent the space using Amazon Web Services or
but
Microsoft.
AI is going to go the way of mining, I believe, because right now AI is following exact same technology path that Bitcoin did from a hardware perspective. It started out in general purpose computing, where that was feasible to do, early large language model AI behavior. Watson was doing that for years in the IBM data centers, soft layer. Now we're at the point where GPU processing is better for this neural networking stuff that happens in an LLM than it is with general purpose compute. And there's already talk of specialized chipsets from NVIDIA and Intel that cater to GPT style LLMs, which means, and this is almost, I've only seen one outlet talk about this in the industry press, and that was my old outlet, SiliconANGLE, because they followed the evolution of Bitcoin. They understand. ASICs are so much more dense in terms of heat and energy management that it's a completely different operation from managing a regular data center. Most data centers, you walk into them, they feel a little bit like this room where it's nice and chill, right? It's just, you got AC pumping, nice air. Maybe there's some liquid cooling, heat displacement thing going on, something. They keep them highly refrigerated. Whereas if you walk into your typical Bitcoin mine, it's usually over 100 degrees. And you've got a bunch of stressed out IT guys just doing their best to move their air as fast as they can out of there and keep it just under the threshold of catching the place on fire.
Sounds like the parking lot.
Yeah, it's exactly like the parking lot right now. But that's the difference, right? Because it's a dense computing environment. Machines are always operating at full capacity with a Bitcoin mine. And that's the same thing with AI.
Sure. Yeah, no, I get that. I'm just trying to figure out, as far as like the data centers go and as far as a small company goes, like unless let's say you have a data center, say you have a building and you've got the data center, you're either going to buy the machines yourself just to do the Bitcoin mining specific, right? Or if you were like a small doctor's office, law firm, whatever, it's like, is that going away? Is that business going away eventually? But it's really, as a small business owner myself, I still have the old technology for my own personal data files for my client stuff. Other than what I have in my CRM, I still have old legacy files on a data server. I know that a lot of doctors' offices, lawyers' offices, like co-locate at actual generic data centers because they want to keep their stuff, separate. But then you've got all the new big tech companies that just use the different big providers. But there are a lot of legacy data centers out there. Like, what's going to happen to them? I'm trying to think of a path forward for them. Are they just going to get the buildings, the hardware itself, bought out by like an Amazon, or do they just disappear like the corner bodega?
It's a technology stack, right? And there's a company here in town. I'm still under some NDA, I'm sure, so I won't mention their name. But they build 60% of the data centers for Azure, and there is such it's data centers are eating the world. They treat it like a real estate business, but it's a real estate business like Starbucks. Starbucks can't just be anywhere.
Right.
There's a highly specified set of criteria where they can put a Starbucks and they know it's going to succeed by their little big spreadsheet that they run the company by, right? Same thing with a data center. There's this it has to be so far from electrical delivery. There's got to be, this much capacity. It's got to be this type of grade of land. They got to have these types of zoning. All these different little factors that go into whether or not you can have a data center there. There's a very limited amount of real estate that you can build a viable data center. And so they will get gobbled up if they can't succeed on their own as a small regional organization, without a doubt. There's a life for those data centers. The benefits of it being within an Azure or AWS or Google environment are it's a far more efficient use of space, a far more efficient use of resources and electricity at the end of the day, because of containerization technology, virtualization technology. Whenever you have a data center that's filled with a bunch of different multi-tenant type clients that are bringing their own hardware to your party, you've got a lot of chances of failure because you can't diagnose everything on the rack as if it's a single unit with a single manual, right? Oh, this guy's got his own special requirements. This guy's got his own special requirements.
Sounds like a service contract.
Is exactly what it is. It's not scalable, right? It's a cost plus model.
Yep. Yeah, I just especially here in Texas with the grid issues, and I was just reading an article over the weekend about grid issues and data centers and chewing those up. And I know there's quite a fair amount of them. And I just recently found out from several of my clients that they actually have their stuff co-located on, at a data centers, but they're like generics. They have their own server rack. And I just was like, wow, was that going to, what's going to happen to the providers? Not necessarily that, $1,000 machine that's going to go to zero. Who cares, right? But like the actual infrastructure, what happens there? Do they get bought out? Do they get taken out? I didn't realize, you could look at smoke shop versus medical facility versus any number of different things that have different zoning requirements, right? I didn't even think about the zoning requirements for a data center. So, yeah, I just fascinated on the topic because of all the AI. They're talking about the chips. Their AMD just blew out their earnings. They said that the one thing that's still a little slow is the data center growth, and I'm just curious as to those chips are not inexpensive. Is a lot. How big are they? And who uses them? How do you rent that space out at if you're not Microsoft or someone like that? So that almost like the smaller data centers seem to me like they're going to have the legacy systems, and I don't know, unless you think of a path forward, or if they already have, or what.
I think it's a shift. It's a constantly shifting landscape in technology anyway. I think co-location is not. It's not viable as a business model. I think if you've looked at SoftLayer, who grew out of the Dallas hosting scene, and you look at all the companies that were SoftLayer's competitors at the time, none of them exist anymore, or have been subsumed into other cloud providers, just like SoftLayer did. And SoftLayer is part of IBM's cloud. It is IBM's cloud now. And so, and that you've seen that in Silicon Valley, you've seen that in other places where there are lots of large scale data centers, is they've either sold out to the large cloud providers, or they're just hanging on,
so
bare knuckle.
They're going to get gobbled up like back there. Oh gosh, there were so many of them back in 2000 with the .com bust. There's PSINet who. They were like, yeah, we're only using 2% of our network. I was like, well, that's a problem. Awesome. So yeah, taking advantage of thoughts to, short, long, whatever.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Cool.
Hey, thanks for watching The Merge. We've got a ton more stuff for you to watch on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere. Check us out.